Neo's Fox by Vincent Darkfire, Chapter 1. If you're wondering why I have this as my second episode, you probably should watch the first episode. A crowd of girls were rushing towards the backstage area. They all had something in their hands, from pictures to shirts, even phone numbers. They all wanted one thing. They coveted a single man. We can't really get a good look at him because of the crazed crowd of fangirls. They worked together and security was easily mobbed over. No one could stop them from getting what they want. If we look close, we could see blood red hair and a long ponytail. The other fangirls were making sure to keep away from it because the last time somebody touched it, they were never heard from again. Oh, she wasn't dead, no. She was just scared for her life. That was his rule. Don't touch the hair. Obey that and you'll be perfectly fine. From the back of the crowd, there was a small boy that looked about 6 years old. He had the bluest eyes you have ever seen. He had red black hair. He was wearing a shirt with a fox on it that said, "Foxes rule the world." We just don't know it yet. He had a fox plushie in his arm. He was holding on to his older sister's hand. "Big sis, I want to see him." The older girl looked down at her brother. "I know, Sammy. I'm trying really hard. These fangirls are getting in my way." She had hair the same color as her brother. She wore it in long twin ponytails. She was wearing a fox shirt that said, "Proud members of the Fox Army." She was wearing black shorts with knee-high black socks. One of the fangirls was pushed into the small boy and made him drop his fox. He was about to pick it up when it was stepped on. "Mr. Foxy, no!" Sammy cried out as he was huddled around the stuffed animal, crying over his plushie. His sister was seeing red. Her hair was moving on its own. "You bitch, look what you've done." She cocked her arm back and launched her fist, punching the girl straight into a wall. The crowd looked over to see a pissed-off girl shrouded with murderous aura around her. "You want some?" she called into the sea of people. Needless to say, the crowd backed off. There was one person that refused to pull away, though. He wore a black, long trench coat that skimmed to the ground. He was wearing a t-shirt that said Team Fox, enough said. Black pants with 6 belts overlapping each other, sagging over a pair of black combat boots. His eyes were blood red with fox-like slits. His whisker marks were on his face, 3 on each side. He saw the small boy crying behind the enraged girl. Ignoring her, he walked over and knelt down to the boy. "Hey, you alright, kid?" The boy rubbed his eyes, sniffling. "Mr. Foxy." I dropped him, and then he took a shuddering breath. Somebody stepped on him. He looked down at the dirty plushie. "Hey, it's okay. How about this? I'll clean it up for you." He reached down and picked it up. His hands and the stuffed animal pulsed black, and the plushie looked brand new. "See? Here, all better now." The man smiled at the young boy. The small boy looked at his plushie and pulled it close to him. Then he looked over and saw who it was that helped him. "Thanks," the boy said with a bright smile. The older guy stood up and ruffled his hair, giving a fox-like grin. "You're welcome." He turns his eyes now looking at the older girl. "I know you're too young to be here by yourself. How about I take you to your parents?" The teen's eyes grew dark. "Our parents are not coming to pick us up." As she looked down at her feet, muttering barely above a whisper, "They aren't ever coming to pick us up again." The man gave a small frown. "That won't do." The whiskered man didn't even think about it before he offered, "How about I take you to where I'm staying?" The siblings' eyes grew bright with hope, and the small boy jumped to hug the older man. "Thank you, big bro." The girl looked shocked, but shook her head. "No, we can't. We wouldn't want to impose. Besides, we have a place to stay the night." The older man gave a small smile. "It would be my pleasure to have you two with me for a while." The small boy looked at his sister with pleading eyes. "Please, please." He gave her the almighty puppy dog eyes. She couldn't help but look at him with pity. His lower lip started to quiver. "Please," he whimpered. She gave up. "Fine, but for only tonight." The small boy jumped for joy. Thanks, big sis. The fangirls were yelling about how it was not fair. Some even tried to say how their parents were dead too. The teen gave them no mind. His thoughts were interrupted. This will be the night that I'm working for, just you and me tonight. The teen pulled out his scroll. Yo, what you need? Yeah, okay. Yeah, we will be there. Yep. Okay, bye. He hung up from the corner of his eyes. He saw pink, brown, and white. He turned his head to get a good look, only to see fangirls. You two ready? They both gave a nod and started to walk with the teen. They made it their way to the limo that was outside. The two kids rode in awe as they have never been in a limo before. Sammy was pushing all kinds of things, asking what they do. The rock star gave a few chuckles. The older sister was blushing from embarrassment. She blushed even more as her idol was looking at her. So do I get to know what's your name? Her face darkened even more. Yeah. Way to go, Brain. She gave herself a pat on her back. My little brother's name is Sammy Amethyst, and my name is Amy Amethyst. He gave her a fox-like smile. Well, it's nice to meet you, Amy. He turned his head to the outside world. Oh, we're here. The limo pulled up to the lot. Loads of fans were crowding the hotel trying to get with him. As he stepped out the limo, he was rushed by his fans. In the crowd, he saw the same pink, brown, and white. No, it can't be. He was lost in his own world. My little Neo. He felt his sleeves being tugged on. He saw Sammy was pulling on it. Yes, Sammy? Fox, I'm sleepy. He said while rubbing his eyes. Don't worry, we're almost there. When they got there, they were at the Le Porcere, the biggest hotel in the whole town, and they were going to spend the night there. The trio walked through the immaculately designed front doors and were amazed by the size of the place. Whoa. Sis, are we really staying the night? The young kid asked in wonderment as he looked around the grand hotel. The guy that took them there watched the siblings' reactions. He smiled at the boys' reactions and turned his head to look at Amy. She could not believe it herself. This has to be a dream. We were so sick that we're dreaming all of this. She thought in disbelief at their situation. They managed to wander over to the elevator. They rode all the way to the top floor. You know what they say, Mikasa Sukasa. The siblings' mouth dropped wide open when they saw the room. It was everything they could ever want, from a huge TV to a massive queen-size bed. The little boy ran over to the snack bar. Wow, sis, look at all this! He called in wonderment only a child could muster. The older teen let out a laugh. Take anything you want. It's on me. The sister looked at the teen. Thank you so much. I don't know how to repay you. He waved her off. You don't have to. It's my job to help people in need. She could not be more happy. Her brother was safe. She was safe. They were going to have warm meals, hot baths, so much more. The happiness was too much. She started to cry. Thank you so much. You know how much this means to us. He pulled her into a hug. I understand where you're coming from. He started to rub her back. When I was younger, I had nobody but me. I was on the street. She looked up at him. Was it because you were a fox faunus? He let out a small laugh. No, for the most part was because I never talked to anyone until I found the one thing that got me talking. He let her go and walked over to the bed. He pulled out a guitar case. He unlatched it and pulled out a black guitar that had red strings on it. It was an Ibanez MBM1 Matt Bachard. This changed my life. After I found it, I found who I am. She looked at it and noticed it wasn't the guitar he used on stage. What is it? This is my weapon. It helps me use my semblance. He pulled out a black pick from his sleeve. He strummed a few notes. As he did, the world around her faded into the music. She remembered a time when she was happy. Her parents were alive, but all good things must end as the music stopped. She was pulled from the happy world and back into the room. What was that? She asked, amazed. I like to call it the soul. It gives me the power to match my aura with other people, so when I play a tune, I can help them. He said as he slid his fingers along the string, finding a good place to start. She stood there looking at him. Wow, that must be great. He shrugged as he began to play a few notes. It's kinda complicated, really. I can use it to counter the semblance of others. She stood there looking at him, shocked. What? That's unheard of. You can't just counter someone's semblance. He started to laugh. Trust me, I can. The kid heard bits of the conversation, so he wandered back to his sister's side, chocolate bar in hand and a little round his mouth. The older teen rose from where he sat, motioning for the siblings to take a seat on the bed. Obliged, they took their seat. They sat there listening to him play his guitar. The world to them was still. They were nodding off on the bed while he was sitting on the chair. They had been asleep for a while when he put his guitar away. He reclaimed his seat looking out the large window. He was about to nod off as well when his ears picked up a noise that will haunt him for the rest of his days. It was the Grimm alarms. He jumped out of the chair and placed his weapon on his back, clicking it in place. He ran over the sleeping siblings. Hey, wake up! We have to get out of here. They started to hear it too. They woke up and started to screech. What time is it? The sister asked while they both rubbed the sleep out of their. Grim was all he had to say to wake them up. Their eyes widened, they shot up and started to run to the door. The outside world was covered in chaos. People were running from Grim. Hunters were fighting to protect the city and for their lives. A limo came rushing down the street. Inside was the driver from before. The car stopped in front of them. Hurry, sir, get inside. We have to get out of here. He opened the back door, and the siblings rushed into the car. The car sped off into the horizon. Everything was fine until they reached the bridge. As they drove up to it, an Ursa Major came crashing down and landed on the hood of the car, smashing the front of it. The driver was crushed with the front half of the limo. The Grim lumbered off the wreckage and threw it to the side of the bridge as if it were a toy. The car skidded across the pavement. As it came to a violent stop at the edge of the bridge, the Grim started to run at it. The beast raised its giant paws in the air. The kids in the back were trying to get out of the car. The Grim crashed its massive paws on the car. It roared savagely as it smashed the car again and again. He was floating, holding his legs in his chest. He felt cold. He felt around for his weapon, but felt nothing. His ears moved back and forth, the earrings jingling lightly. He opened his eyes and looked around to find his guitar. There he saw it. It was so far away from him. He tried to reach out for it, only his body did not want to move. His body was getting heavier with each try. Move, damn it, move! His consciousness faded with the effort he was able to exert. Then all he knew was darkness, and he blacked out. Awareness crashed upon him as he flung open his eyes. His world was covered in light. He took in a sharp breath of air. It smelled like anesthetics, a musky smell. Then he heard voices. He tried to concentrate, but only made out a few bits and pieces. I don't care if he's famous. I won't do it. The anime should have died like the rest, like that animal. He tried to sit up for only to scream as his world became pain. As the world subsided, he reached to clench the source of the pain. His right hand rose to grasp over left shoulder, only to find wrappings. He looked down to see his arm was completely gone. What happened? He asked to no one in particular as he tried to sit up. Keyword try. A nurse came walking into the room. She looked at him with a deadly stare and walked back out. He heard her say to someone, Sir, the filthy animal is awake. What do you want me to do? Nothing, said a voice dripping with venom. Hey, you can't do that. He heard another voice say this was his manager, who was Bunny Faunus. He heard that what he assumed to be a doctor laughing. Yes, I can. I can make it as if he was killed at the bridge, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now get out of my sight before I throw you out. You haven't heard the last of me. She stormed off. Now let's go see what that filthy animal wants. The doctor and nurse walked in to see the bed was clean, like nobody was ever there. The stuffed fox plushie was in the trash, was gone. Good riddance to bad rubbish. We see a one-armed man walking down the hallway, trying to keep up with the bunny. Every step he took, he winced in pain. Nobody paid him any mind. They kept on doing their day job. He threw up some blood on the nice clean floor. He felt somebody touch his shoulders. His body was ready to run away. He looked over his shoulder to see a girl about his age. She was about 4'9". Her hair was pink and brown. Her eyes were two different colors, pink in one, brown in the other. She reminded him of Neapolitan ice cream. She was an incoming patient like him. He wondered what she was doing here. She looked like in perfect health. That is, until he saw that there was a faint scar going where the voice box was. He looked back to her eyes, those expressive eyes. Her eyes said it all. You need help. He had to look away. I don't need help. I don't need anything. She kept looking at him. Yes, you do. I won't stop until you are given the help you need. Just leave me alone. He tried to move only to stumble and fall to one knee. She stepped in front and knelt before him, gently making him look into her eyes. No, I won't. I won't ever leave you alone. He tried to get up only to cough up blood. Why are you even doing this? You don't know me. His raged throat only allowed him to speak in a hoarse whisper. He looked up to see her eyes. Yes, I do. I know more about you than anyone. You are the one who saved me many years ago. She brought up a small chain that carried a small amulet with a fox's footprint, with music notes going around them. Neil, is that really you? You become so beautiful. He pulled her in a hug. I thought I lost you all those years ago. She pulled out of the hug to look into his eyes. I'm so sorry, my fox. I never meant to hurt you. She had small tears going down her face. I missed you so much. Her eyes telegraphed before she hugged him back. I missed you too. His world started to darken as his consciousness faded away again. He thought, it's okay, love. I got you now, and nothing is going to take you away from me. Neil looked around and pulled the fox fawners closer to her, both of them shattering like glass, like they were never there. Hidden base. In the medical room of the hidden base, there stood Neil and her fox, draped over her small frame. She made a panicked sound that made the present doctor look at her. Her eyes pleaded, Doc, he need help. Neil was dressed in a white jacket with a pink interior, brown pants, and gray boots with very high heels under her jacket. It's a black corset curved in the middle bottom, exposing her hips. The one called the Doc was an old man with good ears, but one of his ears was missing a large portion of ear. Neil, what happened? Doc, is he dying? Please save him. Her eyes pleaded. Bring him over here and I'll do the best I can. Neil placed the tin on the table. He's losing blood fast. He needs a transfusion. Give me the pack of Fox Blood O from the counter. Neil ran over to vault of bloods and opened it. Her eyes scanned for the one she needed, picking it out of the vault and ran over to the doc. The doc connected an IV hose to the blood package and put the needle in the teen's arm. There, that should sustain him for now, but he'll need a new arm. Neil nodded her head, looking at Doc. What can we do about it? The doc walked over to a trunk and opened the latches. I have been working on this for a while. He turned back to Neil, holding a robotic arm in his hands. Neil, eyes pleaded, please save him, Doc. Doc looked at the small girl. Don't worry, Neil. I will do what I can. Now, please, could you leave us alone? She turned around and gave the fox faunus a gentle kiss. I will see you again. Again she shuddered and was gone. Neil appeared in the hospital room that her lover was in. She saw the guitar case was in the corner of the room. She picked it up and held it closer to her. She ran her hand along the neck of the case. She remembered the tune that he played for her and only her. She smiles at the song that always played in her head. She was always there for him at every concert, every time he was on stage. She was there in front row. She wanted to tell him she was alive, but every time she got close to him, his fangirls would mob him. But now she had him all to herself, and nobody is going to change that. Nobody. She shattered like glass again. Hidden bass. Neil was walking towards the med bay. She had the guitar case on her back. While placing her hands behind her back, she had a small smile on her face. She stopped and saw that a man with orange hair, with dark green eyes. The hair covered his right eye. On top of his head was a bowler hat with a red band, a strange black eyeliner. He wears a red-colored white suit jacket and a small gray scarf, black gloves, pants, and dress shoes completed the ensemble, and his hand was his favorite cane. He was talking to a woman. She was a fairly tall woman. She had black hair and she was wearing a dark red off the shoulder V-neck mini dress with yellow design. She looked over her shoulder with her blazing yellow eyes to see Neil was standing there. Hello, Neil. You finally found him. And Neil nodded her head. Cinder's eyes widened. Really? You finally found him? Neo nodded her head towards the med basin. His eyes grew dark. What happened? The man looked at her. You didn't hear? One of the small towns near Bill was overrun by Grimm. Almost nobody made it out, he said while looking at the small girl. Right, Neil? She nodded her head. They all heard a scream coming from the med lab. The trio looked at each other and started to run down there. Once they got inside the med room, they all looked at the doc who was on the ground covering his balls. They all looked to see that the rock star was still passed out, his robot arm sticking out over the edge of the bed. Cinder looked at the doc. What happened? The doc's face was still a mask of pain, but he grew a smile, chuckling. It works. The only man that was awake cringed at the idea. Damn, I feel you. Neo looked over the rock star. She had a smile on her face. She walked over to him and placed the case near his bed. Cinder looked over to Doc. Roman, Doc, let's give them space. As she pulled them out of the room, his ears started to twitch. Neo looked at them and started to rub them. He let out a small purr. She kept it up for a while. Her hands traced down his cheek. Those whisker marks, she was drawn to them. She rubbed the tip of a whisker mark very softly, only to get out a small moan of comfort. Neil smirked, knowing that she had him. She looked over to see if the door was locked. She braced the bar at the edge of the bed and flipped over it. She landed like a feather. She moved her legs over his waist, her hands on his shoulders. His hair was over the edge of the bed. She started to run her fingers through it to her. It was the softest thing in the world. She remembered cuddling up to him in the cold and using his hair as a blanket. She leaned in and placed her head on his chest. His heartbeat was the greatest sound in the world to her. The world around them started to disappear. Nothing else matters as long as she had him, and he had her. Nothing would stop them. My lovely fox, my fox, what would I be without you? She nuzzled closer to him. It helped that he was 5'5" and she 4'9". She let him stir underneath her. His eyes flicked back and forth. His arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer to him. Don't go, Neo. Don't leave me. I love you. Neo knew what was happening. He was having a nightmare. She leaned over his ear and for the first time in years whispered, Naruto. Of two. Her voice was soft, but he heard it and was calmed down. She smiled and kissed him again. She was getting tired. She let out a cute yawn and snuggled back in the fox's grip and soon had fallen asleep.